Welcome everybody to week 6, day 1. And for the lecture, you might have noticed we've been dividing this class into like lecture and then lab. And for lecture today, we're going to be talking about something maybe we should talk about earlier, the triangle. All of modern 3D video games are based on the Humboldt triangle. Technically, you can use quads, squares or other things, but in general, triangles are your basic building block of every 3D game. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how triangles can be colored and lit and textured and things like that. And then we'll move on to Unreal Engine, where we will do more blueprints programming. So were you guys able to get your landscape stuff done? Paint a little landscape, put a little texture on it, a little fog, Exponential Height Fog, boom. Unreal Engine updating. Okay, yeah, that's fair. So, had problems on the fog? Okay, all right, we can go over that. Can you turn in later tonight? Sure. Yeah, this is not a super rigorous class. I will probably not accept work that's too late with that being sort of a nebulous thing. But yeah, if you turn in today or maybe even tomorrow, I'm not super strict in this class. Okay, so Humboldt triangle. So every triangle is 3 vertices, 3 points that are connected by lines. And we typically UE won't load your projects or at all. Yeah, you need to just delete that sphere. So when you try loading, it's got a material that is not in your thing anymore. So what you need to do is just click on the sphere object and just delete it, and then it should be fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Try that, and if it doesn't work, there might be something deeper going on, like if all of your starter material is gone or something like that. I don't know. Okay, so a triangle is 3 points connected by lines. And you might think the order that you describe the points doesn't matter. And you might be right, but you might be wrong also. So every game engine has a convention to it. And the convention is, if a triangle is facing towards you, are the points of the triangle counterclockwise or are they clockwise? You understand? And the reason why that matters, like in this case, we're going B1, B2, B3, so that's counterclockwise. We need to know if this is the front of the triangle or the back of the triangle. And the reason for that is because we only draw the fronts of triangles usually. There is what's called you can enable both sides to be drawn, and we do that in some circumstances, like for very thin things where the triangles might vanish or stuff like that. But in general, there's no right answer to this. Like, which one's forward, clockwise or counterclockwise? It just depends on the game engine you're using. And but whatever it is, they stick to it throughout the entire engine. Okay, so in this case, we have a counterclockwise drawn triangle. So maybe this is facing us, and if we rotated it this way, then V2 and V1 would be switched, right? You guys see that? So if it's V1, V2, V3, let's see if it's mirrored, whatever. If we rotate it, then the V2 and the V1 would be switched, right? If we took the triangle and just went like that, then if you look at it, it would go V1, V2, dang, it's mirrored, whatever. The V1, V2, V3 would go clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And so that would be the back of the triangle. So you can tell if the points are drawn clockwise or counterclockwise if the triangle is facing you or not. And we do something called backface culling, which says don't draw the backs of the triangle. Pretty simple. That saves half your triangles in the world. And every graphics card has a triangle budget. The triangle budget might be, 500 million triangles per second it can draw, something like that, a billion, I don't know. Some number. You have some budget for how many triangles a second you can draw. And if you can just get rid of half the triangles in your world, that's pretty good. Then you don't have to, draw them, and you get twice the frame rate, right? Because the way this thing works is that if you can draw, let's say, a billion. If you can draw a billion triangles per second, if you've got 10 million triangles on the screen, then it takes 0.01 seconds to draw them. And that in other words, you are getting 100 frames a second. Okay, so just because you have 100, you have a budget of a billion, doesn't mean you should have a billion triangles on screen at once, because then you'll get 1 frame a second. If you can draw a billion frames, if you can draw a billion triangles per second, you got a billion triangles, you're getting 1 frame a second. That's not good. You want to be hitting at least 60 frames a second. Are you guys familiar with FPS? Not first-person shooter, but frames per second. Are you guys familiar? Are you guys familiar with that term? Frames per second? Like when you run a game, you can turn on like a frame rate counter and it shows in the corner of the screen frame rate. Ideally, you want your game to run at 60 frames a second, if not more. 30 is probably the lowest that's playable. If you drop below 30, the game is too jerky to run. So what happens is that it stops being a movie and it turns into a slideshow. You know what I mean? Like the way that a movie simulates reality and it looks like people are moving, they're not. It's just a bunch of still images, right? Is because you just displayed the frames of a movie 24 times a second. And they actually double blink them, but it's a technical detail. So 24 times a second, a movie screen will update the thing. And if a person's moving their hand moves a little bit every frame. And when played in real time, it looks like they're smoothly moving their hand. So, don't our eyes only see 30 FPS? Yeah. Our eyes are weird. So, are you talking about the area of high resolution, which is the very center part of your eye that you're staring at, has incredibly high detail, and is incredibly sensitive to changes in color, and has a very high frame rate. Your peripheral vision sucks. So I can kind of see my hand. I'm keeping my eye on the screen. I can kind of see my hand. I guess I can see it right ahead of me, but I can kind of see my hand in my peripheral vision. It's blurry, it's low res, and it's enough though to tell me there's something moving there, and then that draws my attention, and I look at it. Right? Like if I saw motion out of the corner of my eye over here, I'd be like, oh, what the hell is that? And in fact, that's how I detect deliverymen coming to my house. So I see motion through the blinds, and I'm like, what? Oh, and I see somebody walking up with DoorDash or whatever, and I'm like, oh, food's here, monitors, LCD screens, I should say, not just monitors, but TVs too. LCDs for a long time were hard-coded at 60 updates a second. So 60 times a second, an LCD display would flash a new image. Nowadays, that's still okay, I guess. Like you can get a 4K screen that displays at 60 frames a second, and that's fine because a lot of games can't run faster than 60 frames a second in 4K resolution anyway. You know what I mean? Like if you're running Cyberpunk 2077 in high or ultra settings, you're probably not going to get 60. You might if you're really top-end machine, but you're probably not. And so you don't really need more than 60 in a lot of cases, but gamers love their high frame rates because the higher the frame rate, the faster they can see changes on the screen, the faster they can move their mouse, the faster they can respond. And so if you were to, for example, go from a 60 frames a second, a 60th of a second is actually a fairly long period of time, by the way. 1 divided by 60, it's actually 16 milliseconds. Like, that's that's noticeable. That's human perceivable. You can perceive a 16 millisecond delay, right? If you're doing like video games and things like that. You're not going to see it like if something goes like that. You're not going to be like, oh, that was a 60th of a second. But it's human perceivable. It's a long enough period of time that you can actually perceive it. The easiest way of doing it is just to move your mouse on the screen, right? Shake your mouse, and you can see how many times the thing updates, right? Pretty quickly. What about FPS versus monitor hertz? I noticed a gigantic increase from 60 hertz to 144. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? So the frames per second is limited by your monitor, right? So if your video card is capable of producing 300 frames a second, but your monitor only does 60, you're at 60. Sorry. There is something called VSync where it will update a frame in the middle, like it's drawing. You got a new frame available, it starts drawing the new one, but that causes screen tearing. And so what happens is the top half of the screen might be one frame, the bottom half is another frame, and if you're moving your mouse really quickly, like a wall will be here, and then the wall will be here, and it looks garbage. It looks really bad. So yeah, so you can uncap your frame rate by turning off VSync, but you get horrible graphical glitching and things like that. So the better approach is to do G-Sync or have a higher frame rate monitor. You actually don't need G-Sync if you've got a 244 hertz monitor. You actually kind of don't need G-Sync. I mean, I guess there's benefits, but so what G-Sync is when normally what happens is the LCD screen is just every 60th of a second it draws a new thing, and if it's got new data from the card, it draws that. If not, it draws the old one. And G-Sync flips the causality of that around. So what happens is the monitor waits, and when the graphics card has a new image, it triggers the graphics card, and the graphics card goes up, and it displays the new thing, and then it waits until the graphics card has another frame, and then it displays it. So you could get a frame rate of 47 frames a second. You can't get a frame rate of 47 frames a second on a 60 hertz monitor, because what happens is, because this thing is blinking 60 times a second, if you miss one of those updates, you're now getting 30 frames a second instead of 60. And so if you have VSync on a 60 hertz monitor, you either get 60 or you get 30 or you get trash. Those are the only three options: 60, 30, trash. If you have G-Sync on, then the monitor updates whenever the graphics card tells it to, and you can have a 47 updates a second, and it looks a lot nicer. Especially because if you're right on that boundary of 16 milliseconds, so sometimes your card is rendering faster, sometimes it's rendering slower, then what happens is the frame rate will change between 60 frames per second and 30 frames per second, and that is really unpleasant. It's a really unpleasant experience. At that point, you might as well just make it 30, or do something to reduce the detail on the screen dynamically to keep it at 60, which some games do. Like Doom does a good job at reducing detail on the screen, so it always gets 60 frames a second. A G-Sync monitor, it'll just dip from 60 to 59 to 58 to 57. So that's NVIDIA's proprietary solution. AMD has something called FreeSync, and now the HDMI 2.1 standard, maybe it was part of 2.0, but I know it's part of the HDMI 2.1 standard, has VRR, which is a generic term for variable rate refresh. And so if you have a VRR TV attached to a gaming console that does VRR, like the new PlayStation and Xbox do, then your 60 hertz television, VRR enabled, can display 57, 50, 49, and it's a lot nicer. And the fact that it never occurred to people for a long time to do that is just one of those things. It should have been obvious. I should have thought of it. I didn't. It's just a fact of life. The panel makers hard code 60 frames a second, and that's just how it is. And it just never occurred to me that you could switch the causality around on it. So, yeah, but ultimately, your frame rate is driven by how many of these things you have on the screen. And so if you've got, if you can draw 1 billion triangles per second, and you want to have a frame rate of, what does Spraggins have, a 244 hertz monitor, then your triangle budget is 4 million. Okay? So every video game has a triangle budget, which is you've got some target frame rate you want to hit, and if people have a faster, and you have a target video card that you're aiming for, like we're going to target this at a 2070. We're just going to assume your average gamer has a 2070 video card, and we want to target 60 frames a second. And so if somebody has a better video card, they'll get more frame rate. If they have a worse video card, they get a worse frame rate. If it's too much worse, they can't play the game at all because it drops below 30 into garbage territory, and then they have to turn the detail settings down or just not play at all. But when you make a game, you're like, this is what we're aiming at. And one of the big problems in video game development is that if your game takes too long to be made, your target video card is now completely obsolete, right? And so you were like, all right, technology's advanced. We can draw more things on the screen now. And then you have to like, or like people's resolution has gone up. And you didn't think about having your game being played in 4K, which unfortunately to this day still happens. Like if I buy a game and it doesn't support 4K resolution, in other words, the text on the screen's like that big, I uninstall it immediately. Oriental Kingdoms or whatever, some strategy game, didn't like, the developers apparently just didn't think anybody would play it in 4K. And it looks like total garbage. And so I just uninstalled it immediately without playing it. So anyway, the point is you have a triangle budget. So if you're targeting 244 hertz on a graphics card that can do 1 billion triangles per second, your triangle budget is about 4 million. And you tell this to your art team. Okay? So you tell your art team, we have a triangle budget of 4 million. We can have 4 million tries on the screen at once. And they're like, cool. And then when they do their art, they're like, they can kind of choose how many triangles are in their art. You know, it's like, you know, if you're making a human, like you can like all the you know, ridges on the face, all those can be simulated with triangles, or you can bake it. So like you just get a picture of wrinkles and paste it onto a flat face. Like there's different ways of cutting down the numbers of triangles. And back in the day, like Quake, like this guy here, this guy was only like 100 triangles, something like that. And you can count them, right? You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you can actually probably count out where all 100 of the triangles are. Like this is not a high triangle count model. You know what I mean? So, let's see. So this one here, it's probably 4 triangles for the head. Each of these claws is a pyramid, so it's like 3-ish. They only have 3 fingers instead of 5, so it's like 9. And I got 4 sides, maybe times 2, 8. Yeah, like you know, like the body right here, like you just see that's a triangle. Like the center chest piece there, it's a triangle. And then they have a picture glued on top of it. That picture is called a texture. And so, how you apply a picture to a triangle is something we'll talk about later in this slide. So this triangle here for the claw has a little blood and skin on it. You can see there's a triangle here for the foot. So it's got some blood down below, and it's got like a knee texture and like some green up here. And so basically a modeler goes and they put together a 3D, you know, picture of something. And if we look at the Quake Soldier, you can see like back in the day, like the triangle budget was not very large, and so people's heads are very angular. Their shoulders are angular. Like it looks pretty bad. You know what I mean? Fortunately, and that was just a consequence of the triangle budget being low, right? So, you know, you look at how bad the ankles look. So this was, however, the world's first real 3D game that made it big. There were a few earlier ones that were 3D, but this was like the real first 3D first-person shooter. And so the triangle budget was just not very good. They didn't even have 3D acceleration for the original Quake. It was just all done in software. It's all done on the CPU. And CPUs are way slower than GPUs at doing this kind of stuff. So they had a very small triangle budget, and it showed. And so when you make a game, you're like, here's our triangle budget. And everything that appears on the screen counts against that. If you have a skybox, how many triangles are in the skybox? If you have the landscape, how many triangles are in the landscape? If you've got a soldier that takes 100 triangles, that's fine. How many soldiers do you have on the screen? 1, 50, 100? It makes a difference, right? And so all the different teams have to talk to each other. The design team has to be like, no, we want to have 1,000 soldiers on the screen. That's if you're doing that, that's going to make a big difference. You know what I mean? There are some video games that do that too. There's like a Serious Sam, that series, which is renowned for having huge numbers of monsters on the screen at once, right? Mountain Blade, yeah, you can have probably 1,000 people on the screen in Mountain Blade, yeah. And so Serious Sam, though, is just known for having huge numbers of monsters all attacking you at once. And if you do that, your art team needs to know that, because if they're thinking in their head, okay, there's going to be somewhere between 1 and 3 soldiers on the screen at once, they'll put a lot more triangles into it. and then the design team's like, put 1,000 of them in. And so why is our frame rate 1 frame a second now, instead of 100, right? So Dynasty Warriors, yeah, same thing. So you have to have the design talking to the art, talking to the programmers, because the programmers will be like, yeah, we got this game engine and it's got these limitations, and yeah, if we're really smart, we could probably animate them all the same way and speed it up a little bit. Yeah. And so all design, coding, and art all have to talk to each other. And that's one of the reasons why I have you guys doing a little bit of art and a little bit of programming and a little bit of design. Because they all connect. Do you guys understand? Like, you can't just be like, I'm going to make a game with 1 million monsters on screen as a design person. If you've never, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't do it? You're a programmer. Make it work, So, yeah. So the triangle is the basis for everything. All right. So, and you can make a square using 2 triangles, right? Basically, any shape you want can be approximated by triangles. Yeah, each part is equally important in game design. Yeah, it gets hard on like a AAA title because the teams are so big that you can't talk to each other, because the number of possible connections in a company is n squared. If you have n people in a company, there's n squared different interpersonal connections. And so communication actually becomes hard. If you got 5 people, person 1 can talk to 4 people, person 2 can talk to 4 people, person 3 can talk to 4 people, right? If you have 100 people, person 1 can talk to 99 people, person 2 can talk to 99 people. And so the amount of communication, that actually becomes a limiting factor. And so you have to have team leads, and the team leads talk to each other, and then they talk to their teams. Like, okay, bad news, guys. We need to have 1,000 monsters on screen at once. And the art people go, okay, I guess it's time to start eliminating triangles. Let's start baking them in, boys. Meat's back on the table. I don't know. And then the programming team, resigns. I don't know. So, communication and the design and the team leads talk to each other, and oftentimes there's leads for the leads, and just coordinating a AAA effort is actually a whole endeavor in and of itself. Scheduling, trying to come up with an estimate for completion, that's really hard. It's really hard. Okay, so anything can be done using triangles. There's other alternatives to triangles as well. You can do polygons and quads and things like that, but for the sake of this lecture, I'm just going to talk about triangles for everything. And the order the vertices are drawn matters, right? So 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. Do you see that? Counterclockwise, 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 counterclockwise. So that means it's facing us. Right? So there's a variety of ways of drawing it. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to talk about triangles. So every triangle has a couple things we know about it. First of all, we know its size, because we have the x, y, and z coordinates, so we can figure out how big it is. We can tell if it's facing towards us or away from us. If the points are drawn counterclockwise, it's towards us. If they're drawn clockwise, it's away from us. And we backface cull the ones facing away from us. Doubles our frame rate. Easy. Because if you think about it, if you got this remote control here, this is the front of this surface here, right? The back side of it can't ever be seen, because if you try looking at the back side of it, it's the front side of the other part of the box, right? And if you try looking at it from the side, nope, there's another thing blocking it. So as long as you have a solid shape that doesn't have any openings in it, then you never need to draw the back side of any of these faces. This is the front of this face, this is the front of this face, this is the front of this face, this is the front of this face. Okay? So no matter which way I rotate it, I'm only looking at the front of the faces of the triangles on it. The problem is, if your camera ever enters inside of it, then all of a sudden you're looking at the inside of the remote control, and you see through it. Like, it becomes invisible, right? And a lot of times that's good, right? You don't want the screen to just go black if the camera accidentally enters inside of a box. It's actually kind of nice usually to be able to look out from it. But there's a lot of games where, like, they draw the backside of an eyeball. Have you guys ever seen this? Where, like, you're playing a video game and suddenly, like, the camera's inside of somebody's head, and all you're seeing is, like, the eyeballs and things like that. What was the name of the Cyberpunk? What was the girl's name? Can-Am. That's her name. So there's a mission where you're attacking a bunch of people in a cave, and if you die, it respawns you. She's driving, and you're in the passenger seat, and everything's fine. But if you die and respawn, it respawns you in the driver's seat, and so your camera is inside of her head, and all you see, it's really it's really disturbing looking, because all you're looking out at is this hair and two eyeballs floating in front of you, because all the rest of the face is not drawn because you're inside of it. So you're looking at the back side of her face, and so it just doesn't draw any of them. But eyeballs are typically handled specially. There's special eyeball code, and it usually draws all the sides of it, because you're not even looking at the back side technically, because it's a sphere inside of the skull, and so when you're looking at it from behind, you're seeing the back. You're seeing the front of the back. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and I kept dying on that mission too, so I kept having to play the same damn cutscene over and over again. Seeing this hideous, like, eyeball. Let's see if I can find an example of this. Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like, except from the inside. Yeah, no. You guys have probably seen it before. It's a very common bug. Is that from Black Flag? I wonder if Safe Search is actually blocking these, because they are kind of horrible. I just close this and pull this up. Yeah, this kind of stuff. So when the camera moves inside of it, that's all you see. Hair and eyeballs. Okay. Assassin's Creed Unity. Gotcha. Resolve soon. Crashed again? Huh. Strange. Is that some sort of MO or something like that? Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. Okay. Yeah, so backface culling is really important. And then there's also something really important called the normal vector. The normal vector is it is a vector pointing outwards from the surface of the triangle. So if I have this surface here, the normal vector is this. It's a vector pointing perpendicular to the surface of the triangle, and it's always at a 90-degree angle to both of the lines on it. The normal vector is very important. If you've heard of normal mapping, the normal mapping is basically changing the normal vector at every point on a surface. And the reason why that can be used to add cracks and wrinkles and things like that to stuff is because the normal vector is used in lighting. When you have a ray of light coming in, the ray of light bounces off the normal vector. So if we've got a ray of light hitting the triangle here, it reflects around the normal vector. So whatever angle this is the angle that is. Okay? And so with the normal map, what you can do is actually have a different direction at every point on the triangle that is perpendicular. And by doing that, if you you can do things like these are all pointed this way and these are all pointed this way. You can do things like simulate cracks and things like that on surfaces that are completely flat. So if you let's plop an example of this. So at every point on the triangle, it will have a normal map associated with it, and the R, the G, and the B are the different X, Y, Z directions that the that point is facing. And so normal maps always look like these holographic representations and things like that. But the upshot is you can create little bumps and detail and cracks and things like that on surfaces without needing to actually have a triangle simulating all those little bits of detail, which would be very expensive. You'd blow your triangle budget out of the water. Okay, so so with a normal map, you see how this looks a lot more realistic, and you can do that without needing any more triangles. There's a limit to it, like you can't make it like it doesn't actually move the geometry at all. For that, you use what's called the displacement map, but yeah, here's a displacement map actually. So base model, bump maps and normal maps are similar but different. A bump map is a grayscale image holding how high that point is. It's sort of the complement of the normal map. The normal map holds the direction each point on that surface is facing. And the displacement map, you see how these are spheres? Like if we zoom in on this. The normal map simply simulates bumps and cracks and things like that. It doesn't actually change the geometry. See how it's still a sphere here? The geometry has not changed. The geometry on a bump map has not changed. But with a displacement map, it will actually move the vertices up and down. And to do that, you have to increase your triangle count because you have more. You need to tessellate and actually move these things around. So displacement maps are more realistic looking, but they increase your triangle cost. So it's a trade-off. And normally you just stick to a normal map, unless, like, if that profile looks really bad and it's really noticeable, then you might move to a displacement map. Okay, so let's see if there's anything else we need to talk about that. Yeah, colors. So here they have a sphere. Spheres can be approximated with triangles. This is approximated with rectangles. Each rectangle is 2 triangles. Okay, and so you can give a color to each point of a triangle, and then it will interpolate the color between them. Okay, and then so if you have a red on one corner, a green on another, and a blue on another, you'll get like this color picker kind of looking thing. Yeah, you get something that looks like this. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Basically that, but smooth. Yeah, you know what I mean. And so it'll interpret. So if you make one vertex red, one vertex blue, one vertex, I guess, yellow, then it will smoothly interpolate between the different colors. Okay. And then there's lighting. Something is lit when light shines on it. We say that triangle is lit. It is lit by that light, and the amount of light that it gets is based on the normal map. So, or the normal vector if you don't have a normal map. So let's say that you have a triangle and the normal map is there, and you got a light bulb up here, shining light. If the normal vector is pointed straight at that light bulb, then it is 100% lit. Okay, and it's going to get all of the light from the light bulb, and there is a fall off, you know, kind of thing, where the further away you are from a light, the dimmer it gets. And there's different equations for fall off as well. I'm sorry, I inhaled a spider web earlier. That was really disgusting. Yeah, so I keep coughing for some reason. I don't think I actually inhaled the spider web, but it kind of felt like it. I don't know. I hate spiders. Like, well, I don't really hate them, but like I hate it when I walk into a spider web. Let's put it that way. It's one of the downsides of being a tall person. you know, shorter people go through, and the spiders are up here like, yeah, it's a happy day, and then my tall ass walks in and gets a face full of spiderweb. Okay. Hazelton, yeah, knows what I'm talking about. So the lighting is based on how far you are away from the light, and also the angle. So if you have a light bulb over here, this normal vector is pointed this way. So if it's pointed straight at the normal, at the light, you get 100% lighting. If it's pointed this way at an angle, you get less light. So for example, here's a newspaper on California's regions, the Pacific Coast region, so on and so forth. So you can see I got light coming off the monitor here, right? And the closer I get to the monitor, the more lit it is. If I move it off, there's a little bit of fall off. But watch what happens when I change the angle. As I should probably not change it towards the other monitor. As I change the angle away from the monitor, you see how it picks up less and less light. Once it's completely perpendicular to the monitor, it's not picking up any light. Okay? So the more it is facing the light, the more light it picks up. So the equation for that is the cosine of the angle, if you guys are into trig and stuff. So there's an angle between the light source and the normal map, or the normal vector, yeah, either way. The lighting is equal to the cosine of the angle, cosine of theta. So when there's no angle between them, they're facing exactly the same way, you get 100%. When they're at 90 degrees, you get 0. And there's the fall off is the cosine of this. And that's how normal maps work. For every point on the surface here, it simulates a normal vector pointing in a different direction. And so it calculates the light at every point by doing a cosine between the light and the normal vector at that point. And so without any normal maps and things like that, here we just have this one's pointed this way, this one's pointed this way, this one's this way. So you've got a sun or something up here, right, for the sphere here. And so you can see that the things that are right in front of it are fully lit. Things on the backside get no lighting at all. And then there's smarter ways of doing lighting. There's garage shading, which still gives these weird corner artifacts on it. And there's Phong shading, which creates very nice looking lighting, and it kind of interpolates the light across. You know, it makes for very nice looking lighting. Let's put it that way. And so you can see there's a lot that goes into this stuff. You got to be careful around ceiling fans. Yeah. Fortunately, all my ceiling fans have little chains on them, so when my face hits the chain, it's like, okay, stop. I also replaced all the ceiling fans in my house. I used to have these decorative ceiling fans that had these like glass flowers coming down from them, you know, like little trumpets, right at head level. I before E, except after C. So I replaced them all with low profile ones that are flush like this and are like up against the ceiling. Yeah, this kind of nonsense. And so the first thing I did when I bought this house, I pulled all these out and I put in a low profile ceiling fan instead everywhere. Yeah, I would not live in a house that had those. That just looks like a laceration waiting to look at that. Like, my lord, it's like you're gonna suck just a face full of metal, you know, and you run into that thing. Okay, yeah, and you can have multiple lights, and the lights all shine and add together and stuff like that. How tall am I? I'm 6'6". So, or 2 meters, or 198 centimeters for those of you that are metric. A giant. Thanks. Interestingly enough, Goliath was my size. So they found an earlier version of the Old Testament in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it turns out Goliath's height was mistranslated, and so he was actually my height. He was actually 6'6". So literally a giant. Okay, and so the last thing I want to talk about today before we get into Unreal Engine is texturing. So texturing, a texture is just a picture. So for example, I could have a picture of, I don't know, Angel Island. And Angel Island is the immigration center in the San Francisco Bay. And I don't know, let me pull up something like this. And so you can see it was a detention center mostly for people coming from China. Although everyone went through here, Russians and everyone. And it's still there. You can visit it. It's like Ellis Island, but nobody knows about it. And this is in the middle of San Francisco Bay. So it's an island in the middle of the bay. And you can see there's a Golden Gate Bridge behind me. Yeah, there's Alcatraz over there. That gives you an idea of where it is. Anyhow, so I could just take a picture. There's Alcatraz. And call this a texture, because it's a picture. A texture is just a picture. And I could take this texture and slap it on a wall in Unreal Engine. But the question is, how does this map to the wall? Like, if I have a wall, do I want it like just this part displayed? Do I want the whole thing displayed? Do I want it stretched out? How do, you know, this part here, where on the wall does this appear? The top left, the top right, bottom, like where does this little water tower here from Alcatraz, where does that actually appear on the wall? You have to determine that. And so that is done through what's called UV mapping. And U and V is the name for X and Y when you're talking about a texture. So if you have a picture, like here we got some like yellow tulips or something, then the X direction is this way, the Y direction is, or actually it's screen space coordinates, but whatever. You've got X and Y, but when you're talking about applying it to a triangle, you have to pick where do these points on the picture correspond to the points on the triangle. And that's called UV mapping. So U and V are the same thing as X and Y, just when you're talking about textures. It's a good way of putting it. Okay. So, because I could have picked like this chunk, you know, and said, all right, this part corresponds to here, and this part here corresponds to here, and this part here corresponds to here, right? And then it would display that region on here instead of this region. Okay. Nobody knows how you want the pictures to appear on your triangles. You have to tell it. And so you give it a set of UV coordinates that say this is where, you know, this point here is this point here. That mapping. And if you guys have ever used Blender or anything like that, it's got a UV mapping tool, and you click on the picture, and you click on the 3D thing. You say this is this part, and this part is this part. And if you ever see like a skin for a video game, let's see, here's Quake, Fortress, textures. Yeah, you can see what textures look like. That's a texture. It's just a picture. And then you have to choose how does that appear on the wall. How big, how small, the UV coordinates. And then somewhere within here, we've got maybe they're packed up actually. Yeah, let's Google it. So what you do when you reskin a model, if you've heard that term before, it's a very common mod to do for people to release reskins of things, like a Minecraft thing. What you'll see is that it's just a bunch of pictures, yeah, like this. And what happens is this is all the different parts of the Quake Soldier, and that's when you fire that. And so when you fire, a little triangle thingy appears out of here, and its UV coordinates are like this part, this part, this part, and it draws this chunk of the picture on that projectile. When you attack with an axe, the axe has a UV mapping saying this corner on the axe is this spot on the picture. This part of the axe is this part of the picture. This part of the axe is this part of the picture. And then the game loads the picture from disk, and it draws it on top of the triangles. And the way that it draws it is through UV mapping. Okay? And so, yeah, so you can You can skin, you know, different things. It's funny. That's terrifying. It's the high-res shamblers. Yeah. So yeah, that's when you hear people talking about reskinning something. That's this. And so oftentimes one picture is not just a picture, but actually different pictures all kind of put together. So you only have to do one load, and then it loads all the different parts of the axe, the gun, the projectile, the face, everything is on it. And so when you have a mesh like this, then you're going to do UV mapping. You're basically going to click on this vertex and say you are the U, and this vertex and you're U, and this vertex and you're U, and you go through and you UV map it. And there are tools to like make it less tedious, but that's the general idea. So this part of the cone corresponds to this part of the picture, and then the picture will wrap very nicely around it. Okay. And you can have different chunks of the picture apply to different faces and things like that. So my coordinate is here, U, V, right, X and Y. So my coordinate is here, my coordinate is here, my coordinate is here, and then the game engine will display that texture on the triangle. So that is our lecture for today. Any questions about it? Let's go into Unreal Engine. But seriously, are there any questions about it? That's kind of the theoretical underpinning of video games, 3D video games at least. It's amazing seeing how that is rough, but you explain it well. Yeah, it's when I started working as a in the industry, like they started me off with just math. Like they started me off just doing theory, right? The math behind video games. And I worked there for a week, and then I went on vacation. I told them when they hired me, I'm like, you know, I have a trip planned. They're like, I'll just come in for a week. It's fine. You know, it just felt really weird. Like, all right, see you guys. This was a tough week. I'm gonna go to Puerto Vallarta for a week. Bye. But when I left for Puerto Vallarta, they gave me a book of math, essentially math for video games, math for specifically 3D game engines, and that was so useful. It was so very useful. That's why I teach it to you guys. A lot of game development programs don't do any math at all, and it's a shame, I think. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. Fall 2021. Cade, you got a comment? And then Diaz, you said that fog wasn't working for you, right? Oh, it's a mocha. I was expecting that to be a brewed coffee. I forgot that I ordered a mocha. A surprise, but a pleasant one to be sure. Okay. So, cannot get it working. Okay. So let's do fog. Okay, so the game comes with atmospheric fog, which handles the stuff up there, but we are going to do a exponential height fog. So if you drag that out, you can see how it immediately fogs the world. The location of the fog doesn't matter. Like I just put all my things like that, just kind of like in one place. I just find them easy if I want to. You use the wrong one, use atmospheric, yeah. Yeah, if you use atmospheric fog, it won't work. You can only have one atmospheric fog, I think, in the level. The second one won't do anything. So I could be wrong about that. But I think you can only have one. So, yeah, you need to drag out the exponential height fog, and then once you do that, you can start playing with the settings and things like that. Okay. It seems really tedious to have to math out all of those graphics. The good news is the game engine does it for you, but somebody's got to write the game engine, right? But even if the game engine does it for you, these are numbers, right? So this platform here has numbers. It's got a location, a rotation, and a scale. All of that feeds into math. And -600, -1000. I can just start moving it. All right. Undo, undo, undo. Okay. So the game engine tries to abstract as much of that away for you. But at a certain point, you can't get away from the math. And when I was making laser zombies, I was going through various tutorials on the Niagara system, the particle system. And a lot of times they're like, all right, you know, do this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, my students wouldn't be able to do that because it requires an understanding of what's going on, you know, math-wise. And so even though the game engine tries to make it nice for you, if you want to do anything seriously, like you have to know the math. And it's not hard. If you can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, you can do all the math in it. Like, it's called linear algebra, and linear algebra is ostensibly more advanced than calculus, but that's just because they take it afterwards. It's not actually harder. Linear algebra can be taught to 9th graders. It's just algebra. Just more variables. Instead of x and y, you got x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3. This is 9 numbers. Look. That's it. You know, what do you do with them? You add them, you subtract them, you multiply them. You know, that's it. It's just 9 numbers instead of 2. So it's in all seriousness, like, there's no reason for it to be after calculus. You could take it before calculus, honestly. Okay. Yeah, linear algebra is super useful. Okay. So let's do some undersea. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do some Little Mermaid stuff here. I got my sprinting working. That's awesome. Okay. So over here we got our that, and then when we go down here, what we really want is not to get trapped, actually. So let me fix that real fast. Modes, landscape, sculpt, radius, small radius, strength 1. I'm just gonna do that. That's fine. Now that I have that there, I'm gonna use flatten, and I'm just gonna sort of flatten out the area under here. Oops, too much. Just gonna flatten it out so if I fall in, I don't get stuck. Let's make some happy little plateaus here. There we go. And then we can have, yeah, I might as well fill that in. I was saying we can leave one trapped area in there, but in general, you don't want to have areas that can trap your players. They tend to get upset when they have to reload from a save, and their last save was 3 hours ago because they fell into a lake and couldn't get out. You know, so now if we come over here, jump in, and voila. So notice the plane is invisible. So, but we're going to hide that fact, because what we're going to do right now is we're going to add what's called the post-process volume. Ooh, I can still get stuck down here. Let's see. Can I? Yeah. Let's just fix that real fast. Okay. So we're going to add something called the post-process volume. So switch back into select mode, and I'm going to add a post-process volume. And so what is a post-process volume? It is special effects. Okay. Landscape is closed on canvas. Just send the screenshot via Discord. Yeah, that's a good idea. But I'll just open it up on canvas for you guys. It's not a big deal, like I said. I'm not super strict. Although I do kind of get annoyed when, like, it's the last week of the semester and students are like, yeah, this homework assignment I didn't do in week 2. I'm going to do it now. That's skipping fog, so let's just... I'll just set the deadline to start a class on Thursday. How about that? That seem fair? Okay. Alright, so there you go. So post-process volume is used for special effects. And so, undo. Let's throw a little post-process volume on top of the stage here, just so you can get an idea for the kind of stuff we do with it. You can scale it out. It's invisible. Anything that looks like this is going to be an invisible thing that you can see in the editor, but you can't see in the game. Okay. By default, it does nothing. And the editor preview will actually apply the post-process effect when you're inside of it. So camera speed's too high. So we got this post-process volume here, and we're going to call this stage special effect or something. I don't know. All right, so these are all the different things you can do with the post-process volume. So you can do a lens flare, and yeah, let's not do a lens flare. Let's do a camera aperture. Is it? Maybe it's not previewing. I'd have that turned off. Tinting, image effects, vignette. Yeah, okay, there it is on. It is on. Yeah, so vignette means that the corners of the screen go black, and the center of the screen is left untouched. And so you can add a vignette effect, and that's actually very useful when you're underwater, because it kind of, especially like if you do something cool, like the more you hold your breath, you know what I mean? You know, like you're getting tunnel vision from running out of oxygen. It's a cool effect, right? It's a cool effect. You can add grain to it. Grain is not visible. Let's see here. Grain intensity. There we go. Yeah. So you can add noise to the screen too. And then if we play the game, everything looks fine. Everything looks fine. And then when you walk in there, all of a sudden you're like, whoa! There's something crazy. What's going on here? You know, it's like your character's all of a sudden, oh, whew. I don't know what's going on here, man. Whoa, and then it'll actually blend. Yeah. Wait, this is cool. It is cool. It's super cool. Yeah. And so there's all depth of field, focal distance. Let's see here. So it's all blurry now, and yeah, it's, you know, there's all sorts of just really cool special effects you can do with that. Temperature type. So you make it, you mess with the color balance. That actually might be pretty good for like an undersea effect. You know, what do you think? That could be like a cool. Just play with it, you know, see if you like it. Too much grain, I'll turn the grain down a little bit. Temperature. Yeah. And so now, maybe a little bit darker. Chromatic Aberration. So chromatic aberration is the effect you get when you look through a lens. So like if you ever play a game with like a sniper rifle, then the sniper rifle, the glass, like a lens refracts light, right? But light of different wavelengths refract differently. So if you look up here, you can see the red, the yellow, like these rainbow patterns appear on the edges of things. And so that's called chromatic aberration. I typically turn it off in video games because it bugs me. You can add dirt to the screen, like you get inked in Mario Kart. You can there's all sorts of things you just play with. I don't have any lights. Maybe that's why I'm not seeing that. Tinting. Can't select it. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Miscellaneous. Scene color tint. Let's color picker. Let's make it. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So I scrolled down to the bottom, and under miscellaneous, I picked scene color tint and I just dragged it around until I got something that looked underwater. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold down shift and drag it so the camera follows along. Kind of cool, huh? Hold down shift, drag it, and just kind of use this to place it over the undersea area like this. And I'm going to dip underwater here and move this over here, and I'm going to scale this bad boy over this way and over this way until it encompasses the whole undersea area. And then now what happens when I jump into the lake here, now it's underwater. And now the fact that there's no surface is less visible, right? So I should probably move it up a little bit higher, I guess. A little bit too high, I guess. So we'll put it down in the normal water line like that. And then I'm going to select the water and make it not quite as big. So the amplitude right now is 10 meters. I'm going to cut it down to 1 meter because it looks very unnatural for a lake to just rise and fall like that. You know what I mean? Like that's just not a realistic looking water. So I'm going to come over here. And did that change? Turn the frequency down. Did it change yet? Compile. The frequency is working. There's something weird about the amplitude. Alright. Well, anyhow. I'll play with that later. Anyway, so when you're underwater, you get this cool vignette / film grain / color temperature change / tinting. And there's all sorts of fun you can play with these post-process effects. So when you go into a snowstorm, you know, you can... Let's see, stuck. There we go. Yeah, that. What's going on with you? Weird. Lol, his face weird. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. My mom always said I had a voice for radio and a face for radio too. Okay, so amplitude gets multiplied by that. That's there. That's the offset plus Z. Oh, yeah. No, that's wrong. Okay, that's why. Okay. So that needs to not be U. So it was getting the world location and adding to it. What we need to do is add the starting location. So the whole point of this is to put the starting location. Can I get you? Thank you. Connect. There we go. So starting location is going to have this added to it. Okay, so now let's find out. This should break everything, but it'll be educational. That's what we're here for. 100% you do. There we go. Yeah, yeah, it was cumulatively adding on top of itself. So it add its position to the position, so to speak. And then add to it again, and then add to it again, instead of resetting every time. So now, if you look at it, it's creeping up. It's creeping up. And it's creeping down. So, good. It's a little bit too subtle, I think, for anyone to notice. So now we will kick the amplitude back up again. And see how this goes. A little more noticeable, but either way. So that's post-process volume. All sorts of fun stuff you can do with post-process volumes. Cool special effects. You can engage your inner J.J. Abrams to do lens flares and stuff like that. Okay, so I guess we'll do programming next time. Let's just do new stuff. So lighting. We haven't put lights in the world yet, have we? We need to talk about that. Have we? Have we done lights? Programming sounds good. Yeah, there's only 20 minutes though. So I did kind of want to finish up on the water thing though. So we need to do lighting. That's actually really important too. We'll keep doing a little bit of art. So let me toss out a exponential height fog. Boom. And I'm gonna play with it a little bit. I'm just going to call you the fog. The fog father. Okay. I'm going to increase the density up a little bit, and I'm going to turn on volumetric fog, which makes it more realistic. And I'm going to increase the density there. There we go. So we got a nice foggy day. And the reason why I'm doing this is it's going to make the lights look really cool. So there's a couple different kinds of lights that we care about. Point light is your basic like light bulb. That's why it's drawn as a little light bulb here. So if you drag that out, you can see that it illuminates the area around it. And as you drag it around, the shadows sort of dynamically update, and you can kind of see what the thing will look like. Cast shadows, pretty cool. And so it will look a little weird when you play it because that icon doesn't appear, right? And so you just see there's lighting there, and there's light on the top of my head, and it's not really clear where that's coming from. You know, so if you're going to have a light source like that, it's usually a good idea to, like, you know, have like a lamp or something, right? But these are like your basic lights. Use them all over the place. You just, you know, you have a room or something. You just toss a light and, you know, do a little, like a little lamp or something, and toss a light bulb on it. Let's see, starter content, props, lamp, ceiling lamp, like that, and up here. And then you can move over here, up to here. And now it looks a little better. Of course, we need to attach a ceiling lamp to something, but now it makes sense, right? We got light coming out of that lamp there. Okay, and you can use that to illuminate rooms and things like that. All right. So killed it. away, Sherwin. Okay, so we can put like a roof on that or something. Okay, so that's a point light. The next thing to learn is a rectangular light. A rectangular light is like when you have a window, you have light coming in through the window. It doesn't radiate outwards like this. Instead, it's got like a plane kind of source of light coming in like that. Not like an airplane, but like a 2D window is basically what these things are simulating. And you can see it gives a different kind of light than this, right? With a point light, you can see it's coming out like that. With a rectangular light, it's like this. Okay. Skylight is used for the sun. I believe you're limited to 2 skylights in Unreal Engine. No, sorry, it's not the sun. It's the light reflecting off clouds. So it's kind of coming in from all directions here. Directional light is the sun. Okay, you've already got a directional light in your world, but Unreal Engine supports 2 directional lights, so you can have like the sun and the moon both going on at the same time. And so you can lower the intensity of one of the suns, and so one of the suns is up there, and then this sun here, you can rotate it, and so if you rotate it, you can change the angle. Is it sunrise? Is it sunset? And by default, it'll change the color of the thing. It's pretty cool. I'm not going to put a second sun into the world. I'm just going to use the default one. And so this one is called a directional light. Directional light. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No. I'm just going to name you the sun. Yep. And lighting always makes a huge difference. Yeah. Yeah. So lighting is one of the most important things for establishing mood. Right? If any of you guys have ever done theater, you know just how important lighting is. There's a lot of things, like there are people who major in lighting, right? I have a friend who, prior to the pandemic at least, was a lighting rigger. So he would travel the country, following Tool or whatever, and like set like if you guys have ever been to a Tool concert, like it's ridiculous, the lighting at these things, and like they'll have these like strings coming down, like just like a little string in front of the stage, so you can see the band, but then they project light on it, and so they can have essentially a movie playing in front of the band, and then behind the band they have a movie projector basically, so they can have things moving in front of them, things moving behind them. They have all these lighting things all over the place, and light can be used for so many different things. Like that's an entire semester you can learn about it. In general though, there's 2 things I want to emphasize. Your is drawing attention. So if you have a spotlight, which is our next thing to learn about here, let's say that the quest here is for the player to find a rock or something. I don't know. I don't have too many props here. A bookshelf or something. I don't know. That. Like they're trying to find that. And shift drag back here. And their goal is to like locate this thing. I've got like some MacGuffin on it. Tap in to go down. I've got some MacGuffin on it, right? I've got some quest item they need to pick up. The red key is on it or something. But I realize that this bench here is not quite very visible. It's kind of orange. It's on a gold background. I can't, I play tested a little bit, and like, the people are like, they're walking around. They're like, okay, where is this bench? And they're just like walking around. They can't find it. What you can do is use lighting to draw attention to something, right? So if you want the players to notice something, why is that not being lit? Lighting, cast shadow interactive. strange. It's not picking up the shadow from this. Well, what you can do, if it's not visible or not noticeable, is you can get a spotlight. And so a spotlight is a directional light that points in a certain direction. Okay? Or it's a point light that kind of comes out in a cone. Rather than this one here, this light bulb, which radiates light in all directions, a spotlight casts light kind of in a direction. It's not a directional light. A directional light is the sun. And it's called a directional light because all the light coming from the sun is coming at the same angle. There's no cone. There's no for the light bulb here. It's going out in all directions. A directional light, all the light is coming in at the same angle. That's because the sun is so far away that effectively all the light is coming in the same direction. That's why it's called a directional light. A spotlight, though, is super useful because, oh look, there must be something here. Do you guys notice that? Like, even from a distance, you know, it's not even, like, I don't even have a physical spotlight drawn in the world. But you can see, from a distance, like, it highlights the thing. Do you guys see that? Like I'm just walking around, and it's like, oh, look, what's that thing over there? How do you delete baked shadows on the ground after removing objects? I notice your shadow stays, yeah. So you go up to Build, and you go to Build the Lighting Only. And then that will recalculate the lighting. You notice this thing's not lined up perfectly, so I'm going to put this back a little bit and a little bit this way as well, so it's centered. And then you're just walking around, you're like, I wonder what the game wants me to do. And you're like, oh, look at that thing over there, you know? Do you see that? Like, it's very subtle. And you have to play with it to make sure it's subtle, because if you do like a giant glowing, like, gamers get annoyed at you. Like, quest item here, bloop, 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 you know, like, gamers like, yeah, okay, you know, thank you, you know, but something like that, the human eye, anything that there's light kind of highlighting, it draws our attention, okay, and so it's very important for you to use lighting in a very intelligent and subtle way, and so we might have like a little statue or something on it. See, the statue's invisible. I wonder if this thing has collision turned off. I wonder if that's why it's block all. Nope. I don't think it has collision. Let me see. Yeah, see that collision's turned off. But you know, that statue there is transparent, right? So it can be hard for players to see, especially if you're like a console gamer, right? And you know, you're sitting 6 feet away from the television or 8 feet away from the television. It can be really hard to see those things, right? And so by using a spotlight, you can draw the person's attention to it. You're like, is there something over there? I don't know. But like that spotlight effect, you're like, oh, let's go check that out. Oh, look, there's something there. Cool, pick it up, you know? And then you feel smart and clever because you've discovered where the mysterious statue of Cthulhu is, right? Oh, look at that! I found it. You know. Whereas when you and a lot of video games do this, when you just give them so many clues and so many giant floating arrows and like go this way, like it's not fun because like why make them do the quest if you're going to solve it for them, right? Like, they will get mad at you if you can't find it as well. Absolutely. I got mad at Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. I put it right up there with Baldur's Gate, Fallout New Vegas, Disco Elysium. Like, I would put it right up there. Notice I didn't even say Skyrim, right? Because I don't think Skyrim's actually that good a game out of the box. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a fantastic game. However, there's one quest where you have to find a wooden spoon in a dirt cave. The wooden spoon is brown, the dirt cave is brown, and there's no lighting inside of the cave. Everything's flat lit. I spent half an hour moving my camera 1 pixel at a time. The cave's only like 10 by 10. Like, it's a tiny little cave. And I'm just doing this. I'm like just tapping my mouse, waiting for the interact button to pop up so I could pick up the damn spoon, because I literally couldn't see it. I spent half an hour in a room as big as my office here that had nothing in it. It was a dirt room, trying to find a damn wooden spoon. And all they had to do was this. All they had to do was just take a little spotlight, turn it way down. Like you can turn the intensity of this effect. Like right now, the intensity of the effect is at 8 candles. You can turn it down to 2, right? And even still, do you see how that bench pops a little bit? The human eye is very sensitive to differences in color and light. And so you're just walking around and you're like, huh. You drop down there. Oh, look, I found the spoon. And then you feel smart. Like, oh, it was a tough puzzle, but I solved it. And so you have to be, whereas if you make it like that, it's like, okay. Thanks. Yeah. Cool. Look at me. I found it. So it's one of those things where kind of less is more, you know what I mean? But you have to play test your games extensively. You have to watch your players play, and you have to try it on different platforms. Because what's visible on one monitor is not necessarily visible on another one. Different monitors can have different brightness settings and black boost and things like that. So there you go. Like, all right, I got it. Thank you. So rather than doing that, just a little subtle effect is usually good enough to like draw the attention. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you can use lighting. You have to have lighting so you can see, right? But lighting can be used to highlight and draw attention to things. And then the other main use for lighting is mood. Okay, fog and lighting are used, and water are used to establish mood. What mood are you trying to create in your players, right? Not all games care about mood. Not all games is there an emotional investment, right? If you're playing tic-tac-toe, you're not emotionally invested in Team X. I don't even know what it's supposed to be. Conquering the world or something? I don't know. Right? You know what I mean? Like, not every game involves emotions, but most of the best ones do. Right? Like, most of my favorite video games create some feeling, some emotion in its players. And, for like League of Legends or Overwatch, that emotion is rage. I kid. But like, for Disco Elysium, it does a fantastic job establishing mood. You're a detective who you actually don't even know your backstory. Like you wake up after a horrible hangover and you have no memory of anything. And your partner meets you downstairs and he's talking to you and you're like, I've never met this guy before in my life. You walk around, you don't even know who you are. And you discover basically everything from a fresh perspective as somebody who's probably a pretty horrible person. But it creates this feeling of just like degeneracy and the world's a run-down kind of horrible place. And you may or may not be a horrible person living in this horrible place. Maybe doing horrible things, or maybe just trying to get by. And maybe the horrors of the world are so bad for you, you took so many drugs to purge your memory of all the bad things that have happened. Right? Disco Elysium I highly recommend. And so lighting and fog and water and landscaping set mood, right? So what mood do you want to have for your game? Or maybe even not for the game, for that scene. If you're trying to create a Lord of the Rings game, the lighting and fog and overall mood you create for the Shire is going to be very different than if you're doing Mordor, right? So, if you guys have ever taken movie making, this probably sounds pretty familiar to you. If you've ever done theater, if you've ever done drama club or TV or movies or any of that stuff, all these concepts apply. Like, I was a communications minor in college and took movie making, and a lot of that stuff that I learned go right into video game making. You know, it's not going to help if you make tic-tac-toe, but like for, like I said, for any game that has like an emotional connection, like these are all things you have to think about. The Shire London, that is not the Shire. Yeah, so if you look at this, like you can see the Shire in, you know, New Zealand or whatever is like there's a mood, there's a color palette that is very predominant here. This is a very green, you know, if you just defocus your eyes and look at it, like all of them except for this one, it's just very green and lush, right? And humanity has a sort of an atavistic connection to green as being a sense of peace. You know, if you're in a place that is green and growing, that means you're going to be eating food, you know, and there's water that you can drink. You're not going to die immediately, right? Whereas if you look at Mordor, yeah, that gives humans a sense of unease, right? Everything's burned. We're afraid of fire, right? Nobody wants to be burned, you know? At least most people don't. There's no plants anywhere, right? There's fire and smoke and a volcano and you know, dead bodies, and I don't know how they feed all the orcs, to be honest. Like it seems like they would have supply issues for their armies. You know what I mean? Like where's their farmland? You know what I mean? Mushrooms, I guess. I don't know. Mordor wiki travel, really? There's a wiki travel. You can edit the page. Mordor. That's funny. Mount Doom, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. History thoroughly unpleasant. The region of Mordor has rarely been dealt a kind hand. Successive colonial powers have done little to clean it up. There's no functioning train service. That's amazing. One does not simply walk to Mordor. That's funny. Yeah. So, yeah. And so basically what I've got going on over here with the fog and the grass, like this looks to me like a good Shire. You know what I mean? I don't know about the gold platform. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what kind of art design I got going on. I got a couple snowmen, one of which explodes. I got a solid gold platform. Like I really don't have much in the way of a theme for my game. But what I'm going for right now with the landscape and the fog and the water, you know, it's kind of pleasant. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, I need to do something about this boundary still. But yeah, basically it's like pleasant nature, you know. And so these are all things you have to consciously think about. What art palette do you use? What you know, what emotions are you trying to evoke in the player? And if they're jarring, like if it's like the Shire, but I don't know, it's supposed to be like body horror or something. Like if you're smart, you can probably pull it off. You know, like the dichotomy between peaceful environments and horror can be done. But in general, that's kind of an advanced move to make, and if you don't do it right, then it just doesn't work. So your assignment for next time is to make a misty morning village using a post-processing effect. So I want you to make a little quaint English village like the Shire or something like that. The orcs eat each other, maybe works, but how do they grow up? Like the whole ecosystem doesn't make any sense in Lord of the Rings. Like the hydrology doesn't make any sense. The mountains don't belong. The water doesn't belong where it should be. Like his world building was really good from a language and history standpoint, but the physical geography is just nonsense. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, mini heart attack at what? You just get triggered by me criticizing Tolkien. It's okay. Orc woman. So, yeah, like you have this range of mountains here, which implies like there's a two continental plates hitting each other, and then this one, and then this one, like, and then the water. I don't know, like, I don't know. It's very strange. So, your assignment is to make the Shire or something like that, but you have to use a post-processing effect. Okay, so add some fog, add some lights. Okay, spotlights, point lights, directional lights. You can adjust the angle of the sun to make it dawn if you want. And you can turn on light shafts, and then you get these like light beams coming down, which look really cool. So you have this very soft, beautiful lighting coming in. Yeah, so light shafts, kind of cool. Yeah, so create just a beautiful little morning in the Shire. I should just have these lectures playing in the background. Yeah. So, drag it in post-processing volume, have it cover the inside of a house or something. Just make a house, just make some rectangles, add some lights, add some fog, add some trees. You know, it's not, it should be about an hour's worth of work or so. I want you to create mood. I want you to create the mood of peacefulness and tranquility and relaxation, especially since it might be midterms week for some of you. Okay. So, when you aren't that good, your Shire looks like mortar. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Hope you all learned something, and we'll meet up again on Thursday, and we'll do programming then, I promise. I do like the art side of things. It is fun, even though I'm not an art person. It is fun to work with. So, we got our IS50B people here. I have to go get my daughter, so it's going to be like half an hour, maybe. So let's meet back here at like 3:30. Okay. Cool. I'll see you guys then.